Okay, good morning. Welcome to Stand Up for Jehovah. My first video was going to be about humour and all the funny things that have happened to me as a Jehovah's Witness, but on reviewing the very best stories that I could think of from my time as a dub, I realised that this video is actually going to be called Shit. Now, the very funniest thing that ever happened to me as a Jehovah's Witness was this story. It was about an old lady in one of the congregations that I used to go to who was a member of the Anointed. Back in the day, you know, when Anointed meant something, when you drank the wine and people thought you were pretty holy. Well, now the guys have been demoted, and if you drink something at the memorial, you're just viewed as a nutter. But back in the day when I was in, you weren't a nutter, you were actually somebody. So this old lady was kind of old, kind of crotchety. She was in a wheelchair, and she was really somebody because she was a member of the Anointed. Well, my sister-in-law and her husband had kind of taken it upon themselves to look after this old lady and be a kind of self-appointed foreigners, because, you know, some of that righteousness was going to rub off onto them young people, just by hanging around this crotchety old woman. And so they'd do nice things for her at the Kingdom Hall. "Hello, Elsie. How are you? How are you?" I said. She was kind of deaf and crotchety, if I haven't already mentioned that. Anyway, the very best thing that ever happened was one day in the middle of the Sunday meeting, my sister-in-law's husband, who I'm going to call my brother-in-law, even though there was no incest involved, just for ease of reference. My brother-in-law realised that Elsie was getting a bit cold, and he went round the back of the wheelchair and he got a blanket that had been wrapped up under the wheelchair, and he unfolded the blanket. He unfolded the blanket to put it round Elsie's knees. Oh, well, I think time went into slow motion at this point. It all kind of went really slow. Because what happened as my brother-in-law unfurled the blanket was a small, petrified cat shit rolled out of the blanket, and very slowly, probably about 1,000 years, a creative day, rolled across the Kingdom Hall and up the middle of the aisle, and slowly came to a stop. Now, there was a poor brother on the platform, okay, giving some kind of talk, rah, 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 giving the talk, and maybe dimly aware that about a third of the congregation were now not watching him or indeed listening to him, but fixated on the cat shit in the middle of the Kingdom Hall. A cat shit. I mean, that is a beautiful story. Just, it stands alone as a really beautiful story. A member of the Anointed, a blanket, and a cat shit in the middle of it. But it gets better. The cat shit can't stay in the middle of the Kingdom Hall, right? Nobody can hear what the brother's saying. I mean, important truths are being lost here while we're all looking at the petrified cat shit and just, like, trying to compute, how did the cat shit get into the blanket? Does the old lady have a cat? Well, I don't think she's got a cat. She's in a wheelchair. She can't look after a cat. She's a member of the Anointed. The cat's not going to go to heaven with her, is it? What the fuck's she going to do with a cat? So we're all looking at the cat shit. And my brother-in-law, who's not really my brother-in-law, I did mention that no incest was involved. At this point, maybe that's another story, okay? It dawns on him that as the progenitor of the cat shit in the middle of the Kingdom Hall, he's responsible for doing something about it. So he has to get up and walk to the middle of the Kingdom Hall and, yeah, pick up the cat shit. It's just a beautiful story. Now, like I said, this clip was going to be about humour because, you know, that was the funniest thing that ever happened to me as a Jehovah's Witness. Maybe not funny at all if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, right, big deal. But when you've sat in about 1,000,000 hours of meetings that are so boring, you just want to die. And then a cat shit appears. I mean, come on, guys. It's like a gift from God, isn't it? And really, it was a gift from God because it had come from a member of the Anointed. I mean, God had sent this comedy interlude to the middle of what was probably a really boring talk. So, like I say, humour. There were probably some other humorous stories, but I got thinking about the cat shit, and I suddenly remembered that I had not one, but 2 more shit stories when I was a Jehovah's Witness. Now the second shit story, oh my God, sorry. The second shit story is quite possibly even funnier, if only because of the scale of it. This wasn't just a shit in the Kingdom Hall. Oh no, my friend. This was a shit on a monumental basis. Okay. We're at the district convention. Is that the big one? I forget. You know what I mean? It was all so exciting. It's gone from my head. The district one was the big one, right, where you went to a football pitch. And we used to go down the Dell in Southampton. And I don't know, it seemed to last about 10 or 11 days, and you just sat there for hours in the searing hot sunshine, because it's Southampton, and there's some brother going rah, 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 and it just goes on and on and on, and you're just trying to stay awake. And by about the 15th day of this going on, and you know, you've got sunstroke and the rest of it, and everything's real quiet apart from the brother under the umbrella going rah, rah, rah. And then, you look out onto the football pitch in the middle, and there's nothing to look at, is there? There's a couple of sprinklers. Admit it, those sprinklers are interesting. Admit it, you tried to work out the maths of the as the sprinkler went round, but the sprinklers weren't on. And this is why it happened, because if the sprinklers had been on, this wouldn't have happened. A dog, not a Jehovah's Witness dog. I can guarantee a Jehovah's Witness dog would not do this. A dog, a heathen dog, an infidel dog, a dog of somebody who was going to be destroyed at Armageddon. A dog ran onto the pitch. Now, I think there were about 10,000 people at that assembly, and 10,000 people looked at the dog as the dog ran onto the pitch. It was beautiful. Again, I can only assume sent by Jehovah, because we were ready to die from boredom. The dog ran onto the pitch. It kind of like a fly, you know, it kind of goes this way and then that way, and then you're like watching it. And everybody's watching the dog. And then, this was beautiful. If I'd prayed, I couldn't have had a more beautiful thing happen than this. The dog kind of eased itself down, spread its back legs a little bit, and we're all thinking, 10,000 people thought, no. Oh my God, no. Well, they didn't think, oh my God. I thought, oh my God, because I was ready to fade, right? But everyone else was thinking, oh, sweet Lordy Lord in heaven. Some kind of, you know, Christian thing that you were allowed to say. The dog spread its back legs. It shook a little bit, because they do, don't they? When they're going to have a shit, they kind of get excited. It shook a little bit, and then it slowly, and again, I can only say, time stopped. Time just went slow, as that dog took a long, curly one in the middle of a football field. Just 10,000 people went, thank you, God. That was the most interesting thing that has ever happened in my life as a Jehovah's Witness. Then the dog gets up and runs off, right? And there's a big curly one there. Now, ordinarily, you're so far away and the football field's so big you probably wouldn't notice a shit. But because we'd seen the dog do the shit, we could see the shit. In fact, that's all we could see. We couldn't see anything else. The shit was kind of like loomed large in our heads. This humongous shit in the middle of Southampton Football Club field. And then the inevitable happens. Somebody's got to walk on and clean up the shit. Which, in the middle of a talk, in the middle of day 769 of the most boring convention on earth, is probably the most exciting thing you've ever seen. Like, I don't know, maybe they had some kind of quick impromptu elders meeting and had a discussion about who was the kind of dog shit overseer. I don't know if these things have got contingency plans beforehand and they plan for it, like the go bags and stuff like that. But whether they had an actual dog shit overseer or not, they quickly mobilised the newly appointed dog shit overseer. And ex-brothers and sisters, I'd like to think that it was my brother-in-law who did that because he'd already had practice at picking up shit in a kingdom hall. Now that's shit story number 2. But I've got to tell you, I've got another shit story. In no way is it as good as the first shit story or the second shit story, but it's quite good as far as stories go. When I was a little kid, my dad, he was a good witness, but, you know, he was also quite realistic and he had a bit of humour about him. And he knew that field service was possibly the most boring thing that you could force a 4 or 5-year-old child to do. So he invented a little game for me to keep me interested out on field service. This was about the 1970s. And the game was this. It was called Cat Poo and Dog Poo. And at the beginning of the field service event, probably after we'd said the prayer, because I'm not sure that Jehovah would have ratified the game if we'd invented it before the prayer and prayed about it. So probably after the prayer, we got out, me and Dad said, okay, who's going to be cat poo, who's going to be dog poo? And I was allowed to pick first, right, because I was the kid. That was fair. I think that was fair. So I'd maybe pick dog poo for that day, and Dad would pick cat poo. And then every house we'd go to, if we saw a poo, we had to ascertain whether it was a dog or a cat poo. And the person who spotted the most of their chosen poo would win at the end of the morning. And that was a good game. It kept me engaged. The very best poo we ever saw out on field service, I kid you not, I lie not, this is God's honest truth. One house had a really manicured garden and it had a lovely little low bush. A real small bush, and it was clipped, and the top of it was kind of clipped flat, and it was about maybe 10 inches off the floor. And in the middle of the clipped bush was a poo. Again, what can I say? A gift from Jehovah. How we laughed, how we hooted at that poo. I don't even know if we got to knock on the door. That poo was so funny. And the fact that I'm remembering it 40 years later is a testament to the humour of the dog or cat. I can't remember who it was now. I don't even know who won, but I think it was a dog. Although, I don't know. You see, we had a long discussion about this. If it was a big dog, it would have kind of crushed the bush. And if it was a little dog, it couldn't have got its bum up because its front paws would have still been on the ground. We were kind of convinced at the time that it was a dog, but, you know, thinking about it now, I just wonder if it was a cat. Because a cat could have sat bodily on the bush to execute the motion. Whereas a dog, I think, well, I don't know. Maybe we'll have to just leave that as, you know, one of those issues of faith that you have to leave with Jehovah because you don't know. So, brothers and sisters, ex-brothers and sisters, lovers of shit, anyone else who finds poo stories amusing, mostly 6-year-old boys, I'll admit, since I've had my son, those are my 3 shit stories. And this was Stand Up for Jehovah. Catch you next time.